And we're live. Now we just have to wait for people to show up. For those of you who are rewatching this, I don't know how many there will be, but I just thought it would be a good idea to have a chat with the crowd. I haven't had a lot of time for returning comments as directly in the last week or so as I have been up to that point. And I thought, what better way than to just get in here and have a chat directly. Now, if somebody could type something, I want to see if my chat widget's working. And if it's not, we have to solve that problem, or we have to figure out how to get comments a different way. Luckily, we have Starlink internet. Starlink enables us, if we needed to watch the stream live ourselves so that we can see the chat window. So let's see. Close that. Okay, so you guys are typing, but my chat widget's not working. So, hey, how you doing? Volume is low, Frank. Is it still low? Is that the experience that everybody's having? Volume is low. I saw you on the Shadow Davis show. You are so well informed. I always think that's up for debate, but I try. I do a lot of reading. I consume a lot of information. For every video I do, there's hours. I mean, I spend most of my time doing research. Vote harder, says Wilfred Witzke. Well, you can be dour on the entire situation, but as long as you're paying taxes, as long as you're engaging in the system by partaking in its taxation and obeying the laws, then maybe you should consider voting too. I'm not really sure what you're trying to accomplish with that. Hi, Frank. I'm new to your channel. Love what you're doing. Keep it up. That's Christopher Snyder. I intend to. Okay, you have volume maxed on your phone. All right, so hopefully I don't deafen anybody. Let's see here. Let's turn, what are we going to turn up? How about that? Is that better? Is that too loud? Is that better? Good afternoon, Frank. Mike Pierce says tax to death. Absolutely. You get penalized for prosperity in this country and you get rewarded for staying poor. And that's the way it is. Like, you get rewarded for staying below a certain amount of income. So that's good. You like that better? Maybe that's the volume I'll stick with when I record in the future. Could it go higher? Could it go lower? Or are we perfect? And that was perfect. That wasn't some Illuminati hand gesture. I get people asking me all the time. They're just like, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you do all these things? It's like, I talk with my hands. I don't know. Hello, legend. How are you? I'm doing pretty good today, actually. Got up this morning. There's a game called Uno, and then there's a game called Duo. And my son has picked up Uno. He's 5 years old, but he's picked up Uno pretty good, so he wanted to check out this Duo game. So we tried that until everybody got frustrated. Otherwise, it was coffee, doing some reading, and now I'm here. I thought you guys might appreciate this more than the typical video. I don't do too many lives. This seems to be the bread and butter of content creators. They do live streams and chat with the audience, and rather than sit here and type all day, which is what I was planning on doing, because I'm probably 1,500 or 2,000 comments behind on everything. I can't even keep up with my notifications because it's like there's only so much time. So you can read and you can prepare and you can make videos, or you can spend all day doing comments and still there's a family that requires my presence. So, and that's part of why I took, what was it? What's today? Today's Saturday? So I think it was Thursday I didn't make a video. Because I realized in 70 odd days, I'm in the house and I'm doing this work, but I don't see my kids very much. So I spent the day rearranging shelves and rearranging bed frames and cleaning, because even though I was hypercritical of people going online and throwing their spouses under the bus, really made me sick. I was conscious of the message, which is, it's the domestic situation is a shared duty. And I hadn't been pulling my weight. Now, mind you, I've been back here in the office doing what I do back here, and my wife appreciates that and hasn't ever complained. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to clean the house top to bottom anyway. Back to the comments. Greeting from Nova Scotia, Frank. Greetings. Good to see you, Binks. There's actually a comment of yours that I screenshotted with the intention of putting it in my next video because you said something very well. But as often happens, I have so many things that I want to put into videos that every day I got to pick and choose what I try and cover. And there's so many aspects. I want to talk about trucking. I want to talk about smartphone use and what it's doing to your brain. I want to talk about the things that you said in your comment. Hot Granny says, because it isn't going to matter who you vote for if you live in Alberta, our vote doesn't count, so do the right thing, find your balls and your backbone, and let's get this done. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm assuming separation. I got to push back on that because if Ontario is split, if there's an even split down the middle of Conservative and Liberal voters, then the West decides the election. You can flip it on its head. So your vote matters. It just doesn't matter relative to the weight of the population if they decide to all vote one way. But in an election like this, the West is the backstop. Also, it's Western money that supports the Conservative Party far more than Eastern money. I think votes matter. I've talked a lot about the lack of representation in this country for Westerners. Equalization, the unfairness of the Federation. I get it. I still think your vote matters. The question is whether or not you think there's enough there to vote for. And I can't make that judgment. I can only tell you what I think. Sherry Fish says, watch all your videos and share. I appreciate that because what I make isn't useful to anybody if it doesn't get out there. And we have decided on this channel to make life hard. We don't have ads. I'm not a YouTube partner. So far, I'm sticking to that, even though the overwhelming everybody. I even got a text message from Wyatt the other day, and Wyatt Claypool over at the National Telegraph, and he's like, make sure you turn on your ads. You're losing out. And it's the second or third time he's told me that. And he's right, and I think the audience is right. It's not, it is a little bit not wanting to make you guys sit through McDonald's ads while you're watching my videos. Now, Wyatt has informed me. He's been very educational, very helpful. He says you can tailor it. You can turn off as many ads as you want. You can make sure there's only ads at the beginning. Like you can do it a bunch of different ways. And you get a bit more reach. You don't get as much as if you pack it full of ads. But the other part is, if you're a YouTube partner, you have the eye of YouTube Sauron upon you. And so I notice that there's a greater degree of free speech on YouTube these days than there was 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe all the way back to 2016, where you had to be very careful what you said. I think the presence of X is actually doing us all a service. And because I'm not a YouTube partner, I can use words like trans without activating the flags. Now, if there's certain words like FLAT Earth that will trigger YouTube, or climate change, usually if you're talking about climate change, but they're very sophisticated. It's not just a keyword algorithmic censorship that they're engaged in. You can talk about climate change, but if you start talking about it not being real, then you'll get the banner. It'd be a fun experiment, actually, to say all the keywords to see which banner they think is the most high priority banner to slap on the bottom of your video, but it doesn't affect your reach. And they don't content flag you anymore. So we have a degree of free speech, and I worry that if we became YouTube partners, we would lose that. And the money side of it isn't even a factor because we're talking about pennies, maybe dollars over the course of a month. It would be just for the reach, but I don't know. I think slow and steady wins the race. I'm already losing all of you. Frank in Saskatchewan. Hello, Frank. BC born checking in. Love your insights, says the Grinch. Thank you. I'm glad you listened. Again, you guys make it what it is. I make the content, but you guys decide what it's worth. Frank in Saskatchewan. 53 years, and we have been robbed for all of it. You're right. It's actually longer than that. I have to push back. It's 150 years of Ottawa not being responsive to the needs of Western Canada. You can go all the way back to the founding, when the land surveyors came out, and the one land surveyor told the truth. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And then the other guy that they sent out because they didn't like the truth, he gave them the information they wanted, and it ended up being that the railroad was laid in the wrong place. And so a bunch of Western time and prosperity was wasted right there. And that goes back to before they were even territories, back before they were provinces. Like, it's 150 years of struggling against Ottawa. I think we could create an Alberta Republic in the image of the social kingship of Christ. Maybe you might be underestimating the sea change in your cities from the immigration that the UCP has done and is still continuing to do. The Christian percentage of the population is falling by the day. Not that that would be a bad thing. Of all the spiritual things that I've read in my life and considered, the golden rule and the parables that are found in the New Testament form a basis for my conduct in life. I think you could make an argument that, and I think it's been demonstrated, that if you've found a society on those moral teachings, it's going to be a better society than one that's atheistic and focused on ethics. But that's a debate that you can have. I am disappointed with the number of liberal signs out here in Nova Scotia. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Even if these polls, which I think are skewed, and I think some of them, Innovative published one, I can't remember who the other publishing house that has the Conservatives back above 42 and the Liberals around 40. I think the election's far closer than it should be. And I think that's a testament to how brainwashed the public actually is, that they think that swapping out Trudeau for Carney somehow changes anything or doesn't make the situation worse. And one of the things I struggle with is, how do I communicate that? How do I reach these people? How do I make them understand that this guy's a central banker? The things that Brookfield has done. There's 100 other content creators out there producing good content, high-value content. But how do you reach the liberal voter? They're literally, so many of them are desperately low information. They don't know what they're doing. And how do you reach them? Because I'm sure you've had the experience. You try and have a conversation, a fact-based conversation, and you put things out, point form, pros, cons, the whole thing, and they just get angry. I don't know. I'm disappointed too. I'm disappointed in what I see. In the East, and probably most provinces, the majority of Liberal voters are in the populated urban centers, which for me here in Ontario is the biggest challenge. For sure it is, man. Toronto has this idea that they're the center of the universe, and it's a very heavy government city. And it's not just that there's government workers who have opinions that don't match up with the rest of the population. They're very loud, they're well-financed, and they have family members, they've got kids, they got friends. And because they're loud, and because they're visible, and because they're powerful, it browbeats people into silence who think otherwise. So there's a lack of conservative coordination. There's a lack of coordination among those who share different points of view because they're afraid of speaking out and afraid of being targeted. I lived there a long time, and there's definitely a draconian, maybe it's draconian's the wrong word. There's definitely a self-censorship that's prominent that doesn't exist here. Or if it exists here, it's the other way. I've had some experiences here that I would not have in Ontario, with people being willing to openly discuss certain hot button issues that you would never have a conversation about in Ontario unless you knew the person that you were talking to was of like mind because of the targeted. Troy Easter, good to see you. Speaking of people back east, hit that like button, folks. He says, yeah, I guess, I don't do that either. That's the other thing, is the content creators are always telling their audience, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. You guys know how to do all that. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. If you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it. I'm not going to beg you to do it. Every other video in the history of YouTube is telling you to do that within the first 2 minutes of the video opening, so I'm pretty sure you know. Wholesome Homestead Kitchen says, my channel is not monetized, but I keep trying to warn people to get ready. Well, that's, getting ready. In the face of chaos, the antidote to paranoia or the antidote to fear is to be engaged in a high level of preparation in whatever way that is. If you're in the city, you might be in an apartment. You might feel like there's nothing you can do. Look, apartments tend to have thick doors. If you're well stocked and you're well supplied, you always have the option of isolating or retreating or fortifying. If you think that economic turmoil is coming, having some stuff laid in, even small things, even a few extra bags of rice, whatever, you might find that you're happy with those things. If you're blessed enough to live outside the city, and depending on how you look at it, because I think we have an 85% urban-rural skew these days. Maybe it's 80-20, but most people live in the cities. That's because most people are happy in the cities, I think, anyway. Maybe they're all miserable. I don't actually know. I got away from them as soon as I had the opportunity to, and I've never looked back. But some people really enjoy living in the cities. It always surprises me when I look at subdivisions and that the walls are so close together that you can barely fit a person down between the houses, and there's windows facing the windows of your neighbor. I've never liked that. But to some people, that's not a problem. But if you're fortunate enough to live in a rural setting, or you are in the city and you have a yard, converting some of that into food production, it's good for you. It's good for your hands. It's good for your peace. Leave the cell phone inside. Leave the smartphone on the counter and just get outside and do things under the sun. And that'll make you feel more peace while everybody else is running around like chickens with their heads cut off. 65 years old in the West Milch Cow, 1915. 65 years in the West Milch Cow, 1915. I don't know what that means. Will you help with the new Buffalo Constitution? You and Peterson? I don't even know what that is. The new Buffalo Constitution. Is that something coming out of the Buffalo Party, or is that a new thing? It started with Laurier. The fur trade was dying off, and they looked to the prairies to replace the income. Yep, this was a resource colony. And then the entire country became a resource colony for other nations. I don't know what the point was. They settled it with the intention of robbing it to keep the East saturated with cash and resources, and then they just turned around and gave the whole damn country away anyway. It's kind of disgusting. Wilfred Witzke says, amen. I remember those days when YouTube was removing videos left, right, and center. Glad those days are behind us now. They're behind us for now. That's the only correction I would engage in there. I remember having a video, which was just Donald Trump reading a poem at a rally, got me a strike and a ban from YouTube for a week. Just posting that. And it wasn't a copyright strike. It was a content strike. And it was a poem. It didn't say anything specific. It didn't identify anybody, but YouTube decided. And it was about letting a snake, something to do with letting a snake, taking in a sick snake, and then the snake turns around and bites you and kills you. So it wasn't about anything identifiable, but YouTube decided that that was hate speech back in 2016. Ottawa created division between the East and West decades ago. Harper improved the situation, or the relation, but it totally disappeared in October 2015. I think, objectively, I can be critical of Stephen Harper and his government all day, and in fact I have been, and will continue to be. But objectively speaking, nothing has ever been as bad as this time that we're in right now, the last 10 years. If we had have just stuck with what Harper was doing, the level of sellout that he was engaged in, because he was slowly turning Canada into a resource colony too, and they were set to kick the door open further. But they did have some self-imposed breaks. I often talk about Bernier in that context because Bernier was the guy in the Harper government who wanted China here the worst. Harper wasn't so much, and the people around Harper, they wanted to put the brakes on it. But on another file, $250,000 a year immigration when Harper left office. If we had kept that for the last 10 years, that's only, I shouldn't say only, but I'll use the word only considering what we're comparing it against. That would have only been 2.5 million new Canadians, so-called new Canadians. Instead, we have millions and millions and millions. The last 4 years has added close to 1 million a year. It's hard for a nation to survive that. Nanos, one of the worst polling houses. Yep, very biased, but nothing beats Frank Graves. I just found out yesterday or the day before that I'm blocked by Frank Graves. I have specifically never tweeted at that guy. I have never tweeted in response to his polls. I know how sensitive he is. He's a bit of a corn puff. He's a bit of a snowflake. So I avoided him so that I could at least have the option to comment later if I so chose to burn that bridge down. But I found out he's pre-screened me, probably because I said something bad about him somewhere else, and he couldn't have that. Frank, is it possible to start a new party if the current ones fail? What would the party motto be? What would the party? I'm not going to speculate on what the party motto would be. Not until the time is. Yes, I think it would be possible to create a new party. I think a lot depends on how things work out over the next couple years. What the nature of that viable option might be. There was an opportunity in 2018 to create a new party. That was the PPC. That has failed, well, objectively. Now, that might upset some people. That's fine. People call me names all day, but I tell you the truth. The PPC is a failed project. Now, at the moment, the Conservative Party of Canada, whether you like it or not, has 40 to 42% of popular support. PPC has 2. They're within the margin of error. So the country as a whole has decided that if they want something different from the Liberals and the NDP, they're going to place their trust in the Conservative Party of Canada. And you can argue all day that they shouldn't do that. That's fine. You go ahead and do that. I've made plenty of criticisms against Pierre Poilievre's leadership. I made some yesterday. I'm still going to vote Conservative. And the reason I'm going to vote Conservative is not just that on a point-by-point basis. There's certain things like Ukraine and Trump where they don't differ very much. And that bothers me. But if I'm going to get the same on those 2 files, regardless of who I support, what about all the other stuff? And when it comes to the other stuff, criminal justice, the targeted harassment that firearms owners deal with, ending this wackadoodle concept of safe supply and safe injection sites, there's a notable difference there. If we start jailing criminals and we start cleaning up our streets, that's a notable difference. And on and on and on. I've said these things in my videos. But the fact is, whether they do it or not is irrelevant. The country has decided that they are the alternative. The Liberal Party, in the eyes of at least 60% of the country, is totally discredited. I mean, if you're willing to still support the NDP after all these years, you really hate the Liberal Party, okay? And admittedly, the NDP is in free fall too. And then there's the Greens with their 2 leaders. It's funny when you have 2 leaders because you have the church worked out so good when they had 2 popes. The United States, you can visualize how great things would be if they had 2 presidents. So anyway, the Greens are a lost cause. The point being, the path forward for all things goes through the Conservative Party. If you believe in them and you think they're going to save the country, you got to give them a shot. If you believe they'll try and save the country and they will face opposition from the Senate and the judiciary in ways that have never been seen before in this country's history, then we have to get on with that. We have to show what this country is, that it's a bureaucratic state, that the citizens aren't sovereign, and your government's barely in control. If the Senate and judiciary decide to go rogue, we have to see it. If the Conservative Party's fake, everything they're saying is just virtue signaling, that they're going to govern from the left, well, then we have to see that because the CPC has to be discredited in the eyes of the public. Whatever we do from this point forward, even if you're a PPC supporter, currently stuck in the margin of error, if you believe the PPC can be a viable option under Bernier's leadership somehow, then the pathway forward for you goes through a Conservative government. If the right is not discredited through an opportunity to govern, there is no opportunity for another party to emerge. Everything goes through the Conservative Party right now, which is why I hope they form government. Because if you want the country to break up, you want to become a republic, you want to become a state, it doesn't matter what you want, you progress the most through a Conservative government. There's no guarantees if Carney gets back in that any of the things that separatists in particular dream about are automatically guaranteed. There's There's no guarantees. I highlighted in yesterday's video how the celebration of, or the almost near deification of Trump and his powers as the head of the executive branch, it's I don't want to use the word dangerous. It's too much trust to place in one human being. Everybody's kind of short-sighted. He came in on 2016 on a very similar platform a very similar platform to the one that he's trying to implement now. He got bogged down for 4 years and then effectively removed from office by a rigged election. And then they spent 4 years trying to destroy his life and throw him in jail. That can still happen again. Nothing is guaranteed. So the safe bet to progress all pathways forward is through a conservative government. Every time I scroll, it goes all the way to the bottom, and so I lose track of where I am. So forgive me if it takes me a second. Holy jumping, you guys are busy. What are you doing today to prepare? I don't know if that's to me or not. I'll give you one example. So I don't eat a lot of carbs. I eat a lot of meat. I stick to pretty well carnivore, and I throw some nuts in there, and that's probably why I don't show the huge progress that I'd like to show with it. But all the same, dry canning, very easy. You got to get some jars, get some cheap rice from the store, get some oats, anything dry like that you add water to eat, and you put it in a jar, and look up dry canning, and you put it in the oven at a certain temperature, and you cook it, and then you seal it, and that is shelf stable for 30 years. So regardless of what your preferred diet is, you're going to be happy to have calories of any kind in a situation where you can't afford to buy food. So that's just a really cheap way to have long-term storable food. We're going through some of the oats because the kids love oats. We dry canned that 5 years ago. Still just as fresh as it gets. Frank, I went to vote. The ballot box had to be opened. The ladies there forgot to tell me to sign and date my envelope. They found my envelope. I signed it, and they closed the box, and my vote went back in. I've never heard of that before. Actually, I've never heard of a ballot box be opened. That does not sound right to me. What was that for? BC, early voting? Is early voting on now? Can you vote already? I don't actually know. I usually wait to the day of. Follow the hidden highway. Steve Blau says, follow the hidden highway of dark money cycling through our institutions, NGOs, NPOs. Yeah, that's an old topic, but it's a pertinent topic. The whole cavalcade of people losing their minds because of the U.S. aid cuts tells you just how many people are sucking the tit of the taxpayer. And it's so sad. It's so sad because people give away so much of their life to working, to being a wagee, to being a tax slave. I've done it for most of my life. I've never taken, I was on workers' compensation once when I was 19 and 20, because I got hit by a forklift and it busted up my knee real good. But other than that, I don't take the dole. I've never been on EI. I've never been on welfare. So I've worked. I get it. And I paid taxes. And you give your life away. You sell your life so that you can live and so that you can get ahead. And they take so much from you. And then so much of what they take from you ends up in corrupt Ukrainian officials' hands, or ends up in some Bangladeshi scheme for money laundering. Like you have no idea, because nobody knows. The first time in history that the U.S. government has made even an attempt to figure out the scale of fraud and abuse is Elon Musk and Doge. And look at the headwinds. Look at what's happening. They're trying to destroy that guy. There are so many pension funds that hold Tesla stock. There are so many Democrats that hold Tesla stock. And they're actively engaged in trying to destroy that company. They'll burn themselves down just to stop him from trying to restore the idea of value to the taxpayer. And there's nothing even close to that on the radar here in Canada. Nobody's talking about a full audit of the federal government. And a little while ago, I would say 2-3 weeks ago off the top of my head, the Global Affairs, I think it's called Global Affairs Canada, it was in the public consciousness again for a couple days because there was this website and it broke down all the programs that were engaged in funding gender diverse nonsense in Nigeria to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. It's so tragic because that's the money that you've worked so hard for that's been taken and given away to basically welfare recipients. It's just so disgusting. Keywords run by AI. Yep. My man, you are on point. What is your view on FLAT? It ain't flat. It's not. Now, I will say this before I explain myself. I was in a video, I'm going to say a couple weeks ago, off the cuff, I was kind of harsh. There's a lot of good people out there who, for whatever reason, because they think their religion demands it, because they think the Bible says the earth is flat, for whatever reason, they hold this notion that the world is flat. But they're still good people. They'd still give you the shirt off their back. And I think I actually leveled up my understanding because, I've watched a lot of back and forth. There's a flat earth debate with a guy between Flat Earth Dave and Professor, I think his name's Professor Dave. And they do this hour-long debate. And Professor Dave is pretty caustic. He does a lot of swearing and insulting. Whereas on the other side of the debunking community, there's a guy by the name of Dave McKeegan. He's always super patient. And I've always wondered why. I'm like, how can this guy be so patient with these people? Because it makes my brain hurt. And then I realized why. Because there are good people who, for whatever reason, believe the earth is flat. And I made a vow, I said this to my wife, I am never going to insult them again. Because I hadn't before. And then in the video, I referred to them as morons. And I'm not going to do that anymore. Flat Earth itself, the idea of Flat Earth, and this is, I bet you any money we get a banner. We're going to get a Flat Earth banner out of this live stream. Who cares? It just isn't. It just isn't. You can prove it 100 different ways from your own backyard that the earth is not flat. It might look flat to you, but it's not. It's really, really big. The scale of the earth defies the limitations of the human mind to hold it together in your head. You just don't understand how big it is. There's an entire industry built around space being what it is. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of theory about space. We are on this little speck, and we're looking out into the cosmos, and there's so little we actually understand about what we're seeing. We don't know where any of it comes from. We don't really know where any of it's going. The fact that we exist at all, and that we're able to do this, that we're out having this live stream, and that we're on this planet at all means there's never been a beginning, and there's never been an end. That eternity is eternal, and the idea of beginnings and endings is strictly a human material limitation. Make of that what you will, but it ain't going away, and it's always been there, or we wouldn't be here. Now, back more to the point. Every night, I can walk outside, because I have clear, black skies here, and I can see all the stars. And I watch the twinkling of satellites spin overhead. The fact is, I'm live streaming to you right now off those satellites. The fact is, I can watch a sunset, and I can see that the sun is not receding, it's sinking. It's not getting further away, it's going down below the horizon. I've been in a plane. I've watched how, as the sun goes lower, the angle of light goes up like this and illuminates the bottom of the clouds. So it's dark on the surface of the earth, and it's light up here. I've seen it from a plane. I've beheld the curve. A great place to watch a sunset and a time of year, and this is one of the things that I talked to a guy that's, I think, a really smart guy, other than the fact that he believes in flat earth. I said, you live in Ontario, dude. You live in southern Ontario. Around the solstice, doesn't have to be right on the solstice, but right around December 22nd, watch a sunset. That's all I want you to do. Watch a sunset. It is light. Your face is illuminated by sun rays, and 20 minutes later, there's not even dusk because it slides right below the horizon. Perspective can't explain that. You can believe a lot of things, but in my opinion, it's not flat. It just is not flat. There's too many proofs. Okay. Nanos is one of the worst. Must do collaborations with others to get your face out there. That's Troy Easter. You're right. I've done Shadow Davis. That was really well received. Man, that guy's got a radio voice. I've been on Clyde. I've been on National Telegraph. We'll see what else comes up. I'm not going to go out begging. I'm not Bernier. I'm not going to go begging other podcasters to cover me. If it comes up organically, I'm happy. I think there was a person, What's Up Canada. He wants to do an interview. I've already agreed to it, but I either haven't heard back or I missed the notification. But I'm willing to talk to people. You cannot reach the ostriches unless it is willing to pull its head out of the sand. That's true. That's the biggest thing we fight against. The cognitive dissonance and the emotional reactions of people who, when presented with correct information, they can't see it. They can't see it. It's not just politics. It goes with flat earth too. I've helped people through experimentation understand that their worldview needed to be updated. But most people just get angry, and that's the Gordian knot that we're fighting with. The world, the fact that theory, flat earth, is held by 7 to 10% of the population really tells you why it's hard to communicate about issues like basic biology and why one sex can't be another sex, and it doesn't matter how many hormones you take, how much surgery you have. You can't become something you're not. You need to stay what you're born. It goes a long way to explaining how 40% of the population could seemingly still support the Liberal Party after all they've done. You know what I mean? We're really up against it. Take faith, matters of religion. Every single religion, whether Judaism, Messianic Christianity, Messianic Judaism, Buddhism, Hindus and all their various pantheons, and any other religion that you can name, adherents to those faiths, Islam, are convinced that theirs is the one true faith. And within those faiths, there's branches. And those branches argue about who has the one true faith. And the one thing that they all have in common is they're all certain that they know. Every single one of them is sure. And then you can go on YouTube and you can see I was a Wiccan witch and became a Christian, or I was a Christian and I became a Muslim, or I was a Muslim and became a Wiccan, and there's all these coming out videos. Everybody's got a coming out video. Man, it's bewildering. And I talked about months ago maybe doing religious or spiritual content on Sundays. And I decided against it because who am I to say? I have my beliefs. They're very well informed and experiential. I don't hold that this is a godless universe, but I don't pretend to fully comprehend. See, even here, I don't even want to say anything out loud, because as soon as you say anything out loud, you invite a conversation that I don't necessarily even need to have. I've experienced enough in my life that I know there's something beyond me. And I think I have a good fix on its nature. I think I understand the world as it's been created, and I think I understand that you're a human living a human life, and you were born into this world. You don't remember what came before, and no one knows what comes next. So while you're here, you have these experiences. I usually often think about the experience I had of my dad, right? Now, no relationship is perfect, but my dad was my best friend. And we walked a long way together, and then one day he died, and he was gone. And it was very sad, and it affected me deeply. But the end of him actually created an understanding of what that relationship meant. I felt it viscerally. I went through months of mourning. And I learned from people what he had done for them in their life, small things, big things. And it had a permanent effect on me. So, fast forward to my own demise. and I go to St. Peter's Gates or wherever else you might think I'm going, I discover that there's an afterlife. The soul is eternal, and I retain those experiences and those memories. Even once you've found out that the eternal soul is eternal and that life goes on, the experiences that you had while you lived a human life, which was itself temporal and impermanent, bounded as it is by beginning and endings, those experiences, those feelings will stay with you. They would affect your eternal soul's understanding of existence. Now, isn't that a neat mechanism? And maybe that's the necessity. Maybe that's why there's beginnings and endings in a material plane. I don't actually know, but I do know that when I was younger, so 25 years ago, I was very concerned with seeking enlightenment, spiritual understanding, unlocking higher levels of consciousness, and all these other buzzwords. But I reached a point with it where I'm like, that's not the point of a human existence. The point of being a human is to be a human, to experience things as a human. And you'll figure out all the rest when you're no longer here. You'll have all your answers. If there's reincarnation, and I mean, it's a staple belief in many religious systems. I would also argue that there's evidence for it in the Bible. Again, one of the reasons I don't talk about these things. I mean, there's all kinds of talk about the reincarnation of different biblical figures, and you might say that they are exceptional circumstances. That's fine. I don't want to debate it. I just don't want to debate it. But if there was a system of reincarnation, if the soul is eternal and it goes from one life to another, you wouldn't know. You couldn't know. The value of a human experience would be void if you knew. If you actually knew via memory that the experience was eternal. So anyway, I think there's enough there, and that's all to say that I think there's enough there, personally, that, yeah, I'm a creationist. I think the chicken comes before the egg. Raise a couple kids and tell me that there wasn't an adult human present first, because a baby on its own can't survive. They're not even done growing. They literally have to get out of the body before they're finished developing. Otherwise, they would just destroy the mother even more than they do when they come into the world. Very interesting stuff. What was I even answering? Hope I answered it. Nanosbots from the COVID vaccines. I don't know. I don't know about any of that. All I know is I don't want to speculate about the nature of what was in them. I think that the studies that I've read about what they leave behind genetically are enough for me to have been very happy to avoid it, and very happy to have advised my people to avoid it. I seen one of the bad actors in the PPC is they're sitting on all of my old videos, which I have too. There's nothing I'm afraid of in those videos. But they clipped out 17 seconds where it says I was talking to virologists and vaccine makers, and they cut it off there, and they're like, who were you talking to? Well, I was talking to them anonymously, so who they are will go with me to the grave, but they don't tell you the context. These people were telling me, and this is why I was talking to them, is I wanted to find out. I said, if they advance a medical treatment in the next year to 2 years that skips all the regulatory hurdles, should one take it? And the universal answer from these, I hate the word, experts, was no. Avoid it. Avoid it like your life depends on it. Pretty good advice, at least I think. Hey, Frank, glad you're in Saskatchewan, says Brent O'Pearl? Hopefully I got that right, man. I'm glad to be here. It's wonderful. I love Saskatchewan. It's the most underrated province in Confederation. There are some pretty bleak spots, but even they grow on you. It's a beautiful place. Okay, so no matter who's in power, this is 1616 outdoors. We all need to eat, and unless you want to eat bugs, I'd start getting ready to have to grow gardens and raise livestock, or build a life in the wilderness where the livestock raises itself. Hashim Ahmadi, a regular emailer. I believe it's you that sends me the emails. I appreciate it. People in Toronto live in a bubble. It's almost rare for them to go outside the city. It's like going to a different country. Buddy. Oh, that's so true. And it's been true since I was a kid. So there was this guy, he was married. He was probably 12 to 15 years older than I was. I was just a teenager, and I started partying really early. I started drinking and stuff when I was like 15 years old. So I hung out with a lot of older people. And this guy, he came out from the city. He was married to a friend, and we brought him out to the countryside. Pontypool, Ontario, if anybody knows where Pontypool, Ontario. When I was born in Peterborough and brought home to a farm in Pontypool. But anyway, as I got older, this guy came to Pontypool. We convinced him that there was no running water in the house. We convinced him that you had to go to the bathroom outside, complete with a bucket. He was shocked, and this is why we started making fun of him in the first place and just messing with him as much as we could, because he didn't know steak came from a cow. He knew what a cow was, but he didn't know that steak and beef came from cows. This dude was older than me by like 12, 15 years from the city. And so that's why we started to tell him there was no running water, and we played with his brain for the rest of the night. I started to realize, because I had a split family, so like I had 2 days in the country and 5 days in the city. And that's how my life was divided for the first, 17 years. And I figured out pretty early on that city people have a very high view of their worldliness. And I'm being general here. This isn't going to be everybody, but I'm just allowing myself some freedom. There's a general sense of worldliness, that they know more about the world than the rubes that live in the countryside. And what I learned from the countryside, especially since I moved there full time and created my farm, is the people in the country don't miss anything. They see all. Oftentimes the reason you don't have to lock your doors is because everybody's got an eye out on everybody else. So nothing moves without somebody noticing. Very sharp, shrewd people. And that experience with that fellow, not knowing that beef came from a cow, he must have been in his 30s at the time, that stuck with me. And it's been reinforced over the course of time. Now, that's not everybody. I just want you to know that, but there's a significant cohort of that nature. Greta, the other one, you've been around a long time, says, I'm a Saskatchewanian, barely surviving in BC, China, looking forward to going home soon. Yeah, come home. Come out of her, my people. This is the land of Goshen. You want to get religious for a minute? This is one of the places, especially certain parts of this province, that'll stand a really good chance if the chaos everybody seems to want. People call you conspiracy theorist or crazy because you actually listen to what your leaders are saying. If they get the war that they want in Ukraine, civilization resets. If they continue on so many pathways that they're publicly advocating that they're going to continue on, chaos will reign even more in the cities. I saw a picture. Let me try and do something fancy. Let me try and do something technical for you here. This is a bit disgusting, but there's nothing. This is on a Regina bus taken just yesterday or the day before. I haven't had a chance to make a video about it. Dude's got his pants down. He was probably wanking. He's high as a kite. And these other people are just trying to get to work. You see down here? There's you can't see my mouse, but this guy, this leg with the blue jeans, guy's got work boots on. He's probably just going to work. There's going to be kids on this bus just trying to get to school. And this is what they got to deal with. More of this. If they get what they want, you're going to want a place. You're going to want to be in a place where there's a bit more resilience. Actually, let's just get rid of this live chat viewer thing because that is not working. Why are we even doing that? See, I'm such a novice at this stuff. There, just sit in the middle of the screen. I'm actually reading the chat box in a separate window, which has the live stream, which I have paused. Anyway, Greta, come home. come home. And if you're of a like mind, you might want to consider a move west. If you're not of a like mind, and this generally isn't a problem because a lot of people say, don't tell people about Saskatchewan because then they'll come here and they'll bring all their values with them. I've met a lot of expats from BC and Ontario since I moved here, coming with their families of 3, 4, and 5. Very good demographics. I very much like what I see. Lots of young children running around. That's the future. You don't have a future if you don't have kids. They don't bring liberal values with them. They're leaving, they're retreating, they're fleeing it. Leftists don't want to come here because they understand, the rest of the country understands just how different this place is. And I hope it stays that way because I came here not to change anything, just to be a part of what was already here. And the only warning that I've been trying to bring is that the very niceness, the very politeness, the very culture that I value and missed so much in Ontario that exists here now is also the same thing that brought Ontario down by just allowing anything and allowing anybody to come in. So if you want to hold on to what you got to have a tough government that protects a very neighborly and soft people. Not soft. Soft is the wrong word. People here aren't soft. I'm not trying to say that, but there's politeness. There's a culture of friendliness that used to exist in Ontario and disappeared. So when you go to the store, you can end up in a conversation in an aisle for an hour. It's somebody called it the Saskatchewan long goodbye. I went to the gun shop one day just to get some ammo. I was there for 3.5 hours because I bounced from one aisle to another aisle to another aisle just having conversations with people. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's what I moved here for. But you got to keep it. And you have to, you got to have strong government to keep that. I live in Toronto. Word from the campaign is that support from the last by-election is solid for the CPC. I know people who weren't going to vote that will vote Carney. Yeah, I don't know. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. People don't understand who he is. They don't understand what they're doing. It's disgusting. Rural Saskatchewan, not excited about moving to any city as I age. I wouldn't be either. Maybe you could consider moving to one of the smaller towns. Now, I call them small towns, but people here call them cities. Like any of I'm thinking Yorkton or Melfort or Tisdale or any of the small towns because they're small. Rent is very affordable. They have, what would you call it, retirement living facilities, close to medical services, very affordable prices. I mean, a pensioner just on OAS can afford to live here, whereas you can't afford to live anywhere else. But I've tried to explain that to some like-minded pensioners, and they just, I don't know, people love the suffering. They don't want to change anything. They love their suffering. They're addicted to it. Hatched 4 chicks this morning and watching my cow to make sure she's good for when calf is born. Hopefully in the next few days. Good luck, 60 and 60 and outdoors. Raising livestock is a full-time, 7-day-a-week job. I got a lot of respect for it. I live in a rural area, 3 acres. I have to use Starlink to get internet, and thank God for Starlink. It's amazing. I've never had better internet in my life. It's better than city internet back east, at least when I was living there. Starlink's fantastic. It's the reason I can do this here. I tried other services. The latency is so bad. Forget doing a live stream. You're never going to do it. But to upload a 20-minute video is 4 or 5 hours. And that's if it doesn't get interrupted. Like, Starlink is stable, it's quick, it's fast, and it's the only reason I can even talk to you and do this work. And I want to continue to do this work. Like I'm either going to be doing this or I'm farming. It's the only 2 things I really want to do. I think I'm cut out for it. I don't think I'm addicted to actually, I know I'm not. There's no thought involved. I've already proven it to myself multiple times. I've walked away twice now. The first time was in 2017-ish, 2016, after Trump was elected. That was the largest social media I ever had. None of you even know about it. And it's not because it was some kind of secret. It's because I did it. I did good work. And when the work was done, I left it. And I went back to farming, nice and quiet. And then 2017 came along, the CPC leadership event, 2018, 2019 with the foundation of the PPC, 2020 with COVID, drew me back in. And I created a new presence. And then I had people showing up at my house, one at least walking around my house at night while we were inside sleeping. I realized that because of my farm, I had a public-facing business. My address was online. Anybody could find it. So if you watch my videos, you could look up my address, and then you could just show up at my house. Now, most of you understand that that's inappropriate, but some few don't think that's inappropriate, and so they did. They come and knock on my door. I saw a video. I just wanted to come and meet you. Oh, lion's share were friendly, but that one at night was quite disturbing, and so that was really the catalyst for going dark again, because I'm like, hey, if I'm ever going to return to this, I've got to move now. Do you understand that? Do people actually understand what that means? I lived in one place longer than I'd lived anywhere else in my life. I went there in 2003, and I was there until 2022. Now, that house had its problems. If people only knew. Rodents, bugs. It was rough, and I didn't have the money to fix it, but it was home. I built a business there. I built a family there. And that realization that you got to go, that you got to figure out how to get out so that you can return to doing this and keep your family safe at the same time. I couldn't afford to get big. I couldn't afford to have 100,000 subs with my address online. I had to stop. And so then I came here. I got it all done. April of 2022, we were here. And I thought I was going to jump right back into this. But I didn't, for various reasons. I had work. I had young kids. I didn't do it. And I also wanted to know once and for all, because my detractors and a lot of the people in social media, they're here because they're narcissists. They're here because they're addicted to the dopamine hits. Not everybody. And I wanted to know it was much more than just numbers. The biggest statistic that I look at, and I don't look at it as a measure of success. I look at it as a measure of, holy crap. And that statistic is how many hours you people spend watching my videos. And we're talking 4 hours after a video's out. You people have already put anywhere from a month to 3 months of watch time into that video. I'm taking that life from you. You're never getting it back. You're choosing to spend your time watching what I'm saying. Do you know how big a responsibility that is? To not mislead or to do my best. It's every single day. I come in here, and every night when I'm reading and I'm doing my thing, before I hit that record button, I wonder if I should even be doing it, because I'm going to be taking that much more of your life away. So I best put value into it and try my best to deliver something that's good for you, or just not waste your time. And I realized, after relocating and doing all these things, that my motivation isn't, I guess if I cared more about fame, I'd turn on ads, or I'd do every single interview that's requested of me, or I'd jump through hoops, or I'd be doing shorts, or I'd be doing all this stuff. What I actually care about is the information and trying to get it to people. That's my primary motivator. And enough people have, and this is a hard one to understand, and it may be hard for people to accept. I'm me living my life. I know what my life is. I know where I come from, and I know where I am. I'm living with myself every single day. So the sound of my voice is just my voice. It's just how I exist. But then when you have thousands of people telling you that you can communicate and that you effectively talk things out and you have good recall and memory and good presentation skills and all this stuff, you start to accept after years of it that maybe you do have something that you should share with people. Maybe you do have a gift and you should be putting it online. Personally, I'd love to retreat back to farming and isolation, because I'm an introvert by my nature. I like my books and I like my quiet. I like watching the birds. There's an owl that's flying around here. I like watching him. Lately, 40 deer, I'm looking in the direction where they show up. Every single evening around sunset, anywhere from 20 to 40 deer show up in the field. And with the deer comes the wolf. There's a big timber wolf. And I just watch them interact. That's my downtime. When I'm not with my family, that's my downtime, is spending 10 or 15 minutes just staring out the window, watching how these deer couldn't care less about that timber wolf. He's patrolling around them. They don't even watch him. they accept their fate. And it's an amazing thing to watch. But that's where my heart actually is. But I also feel like there might be some good to do, which is why I come back. And that's why I'm here. And that's why this time round, I'm not going away. I've gone away twice for a couple different reasons. It ain't the fame I'm after. It ain't the clicks. It's nothing. I don't even look at my like count. Like I'm just trying to do something good. And that's why I should be here, because I don't want to be here. It's the same bloody reason. People say all the time, they're just like, oh, you should be prime minister. Oh, you should be governor. They come at it from different angles. And I'm always joke. I'm just like, why are you all trying to give me work? I don't want to be those things. That's never been my desire. I'm not motivated to become those things. However, and this is something I grapple with, maybe if I can be those things, maybe if I'm a good communicator, and maybe if my intent actually isn't driven by self-aggrandizement or seeking power or narcissism or likes or whatever, that might be the very reason that I don't want to do it, and that I'm not driven towards it for those reasons. That might be the exact reason why I should be doing it, which is why I'm here. Because I think most people in my shoes would choose, feeling the way that I do, would choose to just walk away from it. And they would be right to. Which is why I just think I have to go in the other direction. Anyway, I've completely lost track of comments. Binks Weeble, who's funding Bernier, Liberal, NDP, China, Davos. I think there's a cohort of Liberal donor that find him very useful to undermine the CPC, but I think that's only a certain cohort. I think there's a lot of genuine people who are desperate for another political option, and the thing about a cult is a cult has to cycle members. There's a saying that you have more fun as a member, but you make more money as a leader. Very true. New people come in the door that don't know the history. They see some hope. They hear words that they've longed to hear a real politician say, and they assess value to those words and allegiance to those words as if those words alone can accomplish anything. And then they open up their pocketbooks and they make donations, small ones, bigger ones. And that goes on for a period of time. They volunteer. If they're allowed to volunteer, because most of the time they turn away the volunteers. They don't like door knocking because they don't want to succeed. The PPC is not built to win. They don't want to win. It's so obvious. But they come in, they open their hearts, they open their pocketbooks, and then they figure it out and they leave. And it's dependent on a cycle of new people coming in who don't know the history. I think it's more organically funded than I think people want to ascribe to it, that it's 100% a liberal creation. And I don't believe that. I think there's liberal money there, but I think the larger share of donors is probably genuine supporters. PPC needs a leader with better communication skills, and better organizational skill, and better political instincts, better everything. I mean, the whole Portage La Prairie by-election just proved what bad judgment the man has. Bronze Snake, good to see you in here. The Sake, Doe the Snake, that's how far behind I am. Clutch It Up says, I used to prep, but then, man, we're back. We're still talking about prepping. Okay, I'm just going to have to skip down a little bit. That's just the way it is. Got to catch up. Sorry, guys. Imagine being defined and named by your prepaid state income pensioner. I also have a problem with the word consumer. A human being is much more than they consume, but we're defined as consumers. We always talk about words and words being insulting and words being violent. I find consumer to be such an insulting term. Potable drinking water will soon be a priceless commodity. You know what? That's a real problem for a lot of people. And that is one thing, if you were considering a move out west, is to understand the water underneath your feet. I am very blessed to have good water. I thank the Lord every single day for my water supply. because that was, of all the things I was worried about moving out here, because we moved sight unseen. We hadn't even set foot on the land, and quite frankly, I'd never been to the prairies before the day I crossed the border and moved here. So it was a bit of a leap. It was a bit of a leap of faith, and I waived my home inspection. So, because I figured the house I was leaving, I couldn't possibly end up in a worse place than the one I was in. And quite the opposite. I'm in a beautiful home now. It's going to be great to raise the kids in, if I can retain it. It's funny. I own my house outright. I don't have a mortgage on it, and that's a wonderful thing. And I'm thankful every day for that situation. But the need for money doesn't quit. Land taxes, insurance, food, all of your normal bills. I don't live a luxuriant lifestyle, but man, I'm going to need probably $1 million, $1.5 million just to get my kids to 20 years old. I try not to think about it, actually, because it's a weighty proposition. Owning your house outright is almost the because you see your house too. It's almost illiquid, because yes, you can sell your house if you can find a buyer. The Western provinces are not Ontario, so buyers aren't just eagerly waiting around the corner. And I don't even know if that's the situation now. This house sat vacant for 7 years. I can't believe that it sat on the market for 7 years. It's such a beautiful place. I couldn't believe that of the 15 million people that live in Ontario and the millions of people that are of like minds trying to escape, that somebody didn't snag it up and see it as an opportunity. And maybe it's because it's isolated. I don't know. There could be a number of factors there, but the bottom line is I think it was a one-way trip. I don't think I'm getting out of here. But even if you're in a market where you can sell your house and you're in a similar position, you sell your house, but then you got to go live somewhere else. So it's great to own your house, but it's not the end of your need for money. And it's not exact. I guess it's a pool of capital. If you can get somebody to sign a home equity loan and give you a HELOC, then you can borrow against it. But you're not paying that HELOC off with your house, because if you lose the house, you have nowhere to live, or you got to find somewhere else to live. So it's an interesting thing. Even if you're in a seller's market, you still have to go somewhere else. And for whatever reason, and this is the point, nobody wanted to come out this way. There's beautiful houses on the market to this day. I can't believe the value proposition. I mean, if you're sitting on a house in Ontario and you've been paying for it for the last 10 or 20 years and you've been paying your mortgage down, even if you're remortgaging, if you've got 30 or 40% equity in your house, you could probably sell it right now, come out here, buy a house outright. And sure, you might still need to find work and keep going, but at least you don't have that weighing over your head. It takes a lot longer to take a house off you if you're mortgage free. At least you'll have a place to live, even if you can't keep the lights on. But I digress. What was that even? Potable drinking water. Yeah, the whole point is make sure you got good water. I don't think that's what I was responding to, but I've lost track. Critical thinker, my friend. I'm glad you decided to come back, Frank. There needs to be a voice that tells both sides of the story. That's what I try to do, Leo. That's all I'm trying to do. And also, I'm not black-pilled. I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope for the future. But because I don't have a political axe to grind, and I'm not waving any particular party banner or flag, I feel like pragmatically I can see the path forward for a lot of different things. I suppose I have my preferred outcomes, but what would be the point of making a video on my idealism, my ideal outcome? It might actually undermine, if there's even a chance of achieving that ideal outcome, talking about it might undermine my ability to achieve it. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, what am I trying to say here? I can speculate on what I want. I can be an absolutist and not settle for anything less than what I want personally right now for citizen sovereignty, for the country, for the Federation, for the future, or for a future outside of the Federation. But that's not going to get anything done. I don't think there's any room for absolutism. I've talked about that. Frank, I've been enjoying your videos, messages, knowledge, and point of view from N. I don't know where N is, but I appreciate that. Snack hazard. Snack hazard. It is a hazard. You gain weight. You know it at Firecracker. Oh, I don't know what. There's a conversation going on here. Gull Lake, Saskatchewan. Now, if Gull Lake is not Quill Lake. I'm thinking of Quill Lake. Be a great place to do a flat Earth experiment, actually. Glad to see the Canadian flag background. Yeah, I paid for these. These were done by like an actual digital artist. I bought them years ago, so I have the rights to these images. They're not AI generated. Eastern Ontario winters very cold and very damp. It's not so much that they're cold, man. I lived there a long time. They're a joke compared to the cold out here. But that dampness, that's what makes them worse. The winters here are much better. One of the fears I had was, what about minus 40? You know, you always hear these stories about minus 30 and minus 40. Doesn't matter. You can make preparations for it, and it's dry. There's a big difference. It's cold. It is cold AF. There's no doubt about it. But it's clean. You're not tracking mud all through your house all the time. You're not having to slide around on a skating rink because you just had a dump of snow, it melted, and then it froze into a skating rink, and you're slip sliding all over your yard, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't have that problem here. You just got powder. You got snow. There's a saying, it snows once and it just spends the rest of the winter blowing around. I love that saying. But it's not entirely true. We get more snow, too. Blowing snow is your biggest hazard. And yeah, it's cold, but there's a culture, and this is that beautiful culture that I was talking about. We were out looking for a Christmas tree the first year we were here. It was fairly cold. I think it was like minus 20 or something. We were pulled over on the side of the road. Everybody slows down to make sure you're all right. Because when it's minus 30, minus 40, and you're on your way to work, if you see a car in a ditch, you stop. You see a car pulled over, you slow down and make sure they're okay. Because under those circumstances, you can freeze pretty quick. But there's a culture where people take care of each other. And I love it. It's beautiful. But I think the winters are beautiful. Yeah, they're long, but, you know, it's been a long winter this year. Lots of snow. It's been blowing around. I'm ready for spring, but I'm almost sad to see it go. I'm already looking forward to the next snowfall. Now, you got to love winter to love being here. But the whole cold part, it's not a big deal. I have Starlink. It's amazing. Yep, super reliable. My uncle's farmed cattle and grain, both deceased now. Rest in peace. Use German mules on farm, Frank. Well, I don't have a farm right now. I actually, I was carrying farm liability on the house for the last 2 years, and I'm on the cusp of letting it go. And that's kind of the last vestige of farming. I didn't plant garlic last year, that was another big step. It's been very hard letting go. But if I'm going to do this, I don't really want to divide my focus. I'm still thinking about building a greenhouse. I was talking to a local guy who built one. There's a part of me that misses it. I don't know. I still think about it. But there's only so much time. Raising kids takes time. Making these videos takes time. There's only so much time in a day. If you want to be communicative and responsive with the people who are watching your videos and giving it some value in terms of interaction, you got to put time into that. So farming is a full-time gig. There was like 8-9 months out of the year, you're going 10 hours a day at a minimum. And there were times where, and the weekends were the busiest times. So Friday through Sunday were a gong show. Monday was actually where you might get some downtime because your body just physically needs to rest. But then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are all spent getting ready. I used to say I only had 3 days a week to grow the crop. And then the rest of my time was dedicated to selling it. And it was really funny because you had 3 days a week to put it in the ground, to weed it and keep it growing good. And then Friday you're harvesting and loading the truck. Saturday you're up at 4:30. You're on the road by 6, you hit market, and in 4 hours, you do all your sales. Then you're back home to pick and reload everything for the Sunday market. Then you're there, you're making all your sales in 4 hours. So like I only made money 8 hours a week, but then the whole world was revolved around those 2 blocks of time. Like I don't even know how I would make videos or do anything or be politically involved at all if I was doing that again. Because this is another thing, man. The election in 2019 that I ran in, I lost my shirt because I had to just stop the farm. I had a newborn at home, so my wife was busy taking care of him, and I was on the road doing debates, doing door knocking, and organizing this political run on a shoestring. I lost my shirt. I came out of that election so heavily in debt. It was ridiculous, and I don't think people realize there's actually no money in politics when you're trying to get into politics. There might be money when you're at the top, but on your way up, there's nothing. There's nothing but losses all day. Frank, what's your thoughts on Bitcoin? I don't think you want my thoughts. That's another one. That's almost like religion. I often want to talk about what I think about crypto, but it's each camp. Bitcoin maxis, altcoin maxis, Ethereum maxis, Cardano maxis, God help us. When you open your mouth and talk about these things, then you have to defend the thing you talk about, and I'm not interested in picking a winning camp in crypto. I do have my opinions. I'm thinking about Bitcoin has first mover advantage. It was the first. It's worth so much because so many people are invested in it retaining a certain floor of value. You know what? No, I'm not getting into it. I'm not going to get into that today. Telesat, another Canadian corporation, success to failure. Yep. Frank, what about the West Bloc Party? Quebec has a bloc party. Yep. I think that could work. I think we have to get through this election to see if there's an appetite there. I think if Carney wins, there's an appetite for that. But I don't know if under a Carney government it's going to be relevant. I think under a Carney government, separation is going to be the party. So yeah, you could call that kind of a bloc party. I don't know why people don't follow the Quebec model. As much as we can criticize Quebec all day, and I do, they're the one province in this federation that's doing the federation the right way. They have showed the example. They have wielded the notwithstanding clause 12 times, and nobody says anything about it. They have their own rules surrounding immigration. They have language laws. They have innumerable unique things about how they structure and run their province. When any other province tries to do it, it is wall-to-wall smear campaigns. When Doug Ford, a man I don't necessarily like at all, decided to use the notwithstanding clause to end a strike, it was as though the world was ending. Never mind that Quebec does it all the time. What we lack is courageous politicians. I think Smith and Moe are the closest to that the West has ever had to sort of waking up and doing things a different way. But they're still very cautious. I don't know why. I don't know why anybody out here would want to be cautious as regards Ottawa. What can Ottawa do? They can't do anything. They can't even stop Moe from this carbon tax rebellion. He just went and did it. They couldn't stop him from arresting their officials when they were trespassing on land, so they just left. I'm not really sure why we're so dedicated to Ottawa, but every single premier, save one who got disappeared pretty quick, has been a committed federalist. I don't know why. Do we need something like that? I would say we do, but I think we have to wait. I think we're still in the incubation period for the possibilities. Like that interview that I did with Kelly Lorenz, he talked about how he advised the PPC to tap into that Western Bloc mindset, that there wasn't that representation. And Bernier is a committed federalist, so he wouldn't do it. I don't know. They're all committed federalists. Maybe it's membership in the Privy Council. I don't know. Musk put microchips in my brain. I think he might be being dramatic, but if not, I'd be interested in hearing more about that. I trapped the gophers when they had a bounty on their tails. Yep, there's a lot of them. Yeah, Starlink, 150 a month, 700 Canadian. and you own the hardware. So if the hardware fails, you have to just buy new hardware. But it's pretty robust. It's a high investment up front, but it does work very well. Bitcoin mines are data centers. Bid Construction was the vendor who was contracted to build them. Well, that's another issue with Bitcoin, right? Energy consumption and mining, both unnecessary in the world of proof of stake. But you see right there, I just dove into the debate. I don't want to. I don't even want to. Good luck finding me in Saskatchewan. My address is a P.O. box. Yep, I had to get used to that myself, having your address be a P.O. box. And then the post office has such a wide range that even if you got somebody's P.O. box, you still don't know where they are. We have this long, convoluted land location. This is interesting too about Saskatchewan, is that there aren't fire route numbers. So people don't have direct addresses. There's no Amazon delivery. There's a lot of things like you have to make arrangements with people in town to have your packages delivered. You got to have a friend. But on the flip side of that, in Ontario, when someone gives you a direction, they give you directions. They don't give you Google pins. But out here, everybody uses Google pins. So it's almost more advanced and modern than it was back east in that regard. I found that contradiction interesting. You people, PDAT says, laughing. Yeah, I like that phrase, you people. It's about the most insulting I want to ever be. Send a few medieval archers to protect you. What are we doing? We playing Age of Empires? I listen while doing chores. That's a good idea. I need to maybe pay more attention to the audio. I try to pay attention so that whatever I'm talking about on screen, I'm describing. That's why some people might say, like, why are you reading that out loud when I can see it with my own eyes? And it's because this is produced. This one won't be because it's a live stream. Actually, what am I going to do about that? The podcast people won't get this. I'll have to figure that out when we're done. Anyway, there is a component of the audience that listens only. I have no idea how big that component of the audience is because I know I'm on iTunes, I know I'm on Spotify, and I'm on at least 8 or 9 other different platforms, but I upload the audio and it goes to them automatically, and then I have no idea what happens from there. I just know that there are listeners out there, and so I'd say hi to them, but I don't know if they're ever going to hear this. Why do some of us people have success, other people fail in life by age 40, 45? You know what? There's a lot of reasons why. Some few people, just don't have the luck. In my experience, observing reality as I have been for almost 45 years now, the vast majority are where they are because of choices they've made. Little choices every week. So a lot of people complain about not having anything. They don't have anything left at the end of the day. But every weekend, they're weekend warriors. They buy the box of beer, they buy the cigarettes, they buy all the takeout food, and before they know it, what's left after rent and everything else is dwindled. So there's very little left for savings. They make that choice weekend after weekend, weekend after weekend, for their entire working life. And they never delay gratification. If you look at my Twitter bio, the first thing, I believe it's the first thing listed, is delay gratification. And the perverts on the left always think I'm talking about semen retention. I don't know. What is it with the left? And it always has to be about fellatio or about some kind of sexual deviancy. Like, they always go there. It's like, stop sucking Trump's you-know-what, or stop sucking Polyev. Like, they always do that. And it's like, why do they do that? Why are they so obsessed? But anyway, I digress. It's not about that at all. So when we bought our house, quote unquote, and I always use air quotes when I say bought your house, because you don't really buy your house when you have a mortgage. The bank buys it for you, and you just get to pay them a fee for them holding it. And it's kind of in your name, and you have a right to sell, but you know, if you read your contract, they can just call your mortgage and force you to sell anyway, anytime they want. In practice, they don't, because it would be very bad for business if they did, but they retain that right to do so. But we bought in, 2009, I think. And we worked really hard. We saved all our change. And when everybody was doing trips to Disney World or going out and doing fun things or out to dinners, or they were partying and there was a party here, there was a party there, and everybody was telling me about it. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh man, I wish I could go do this, but I made that choice. I stayed home. I lived cheap. I played video games because video games are cheap. You can pass a lot of time. You can have some fun. You can play with other people. You can have a social life. I used to play Warcraft, World of Warcraft, back in the heyday from 2005, I would say all the way up to 2012, man. Those were good times. You get in a raid group, you got 20 people in there, and it's a gong show. Some people are having drinks, and you're trying to accomplish something together. And just I laughed so hard through many of those raids, but they were cheap. It was cheap. And we used to roll our change, and we made extra mortgage payments, and we did that. And we paid it, we got it paid off early. A lot of people don't make those choices because it's hard. People are out there living their life. They're doing social things. You either want to have fun or you want to keep up with the Joneses. You want to have nice things. You want the new car. So or truck. You go and you buy the $70,000 truck, and then, yay, you got yourself a payment that you're saddled with. I've been buying used junk my whole life. The thing that I'm driving now, the minivan, is the most expensive car I've ever owned. I think I bought it used for $12,000. It's a 2013. And I bought it because it's safe. And I keep it maintained because I'm putting my kids in there. That's my whole world is my wife and my kids. But it's used. And if tomorrow morning I woke up and I had $500,000 or had $1 million to spend, I'm still going to buy used stuff. It's actually a lot more fun to buy used stuff. If I had all the money in the world, I'd be buying used stuff. And then when I got tired of it, I'd be selling it off and buying other used stuff. Like people buy new things that they don't need. They buy a bigger house that they don't need. They delay paying off the mortgage, or worse yet, they refinance that mortgage continually to buy the bells and whistles. I know people who refinance mortgages so that they could go on trips to Europe. Bad choice. Bad choice. And maybe you might say, but Frank, I could wake up tomorrow dead. And then you could argue whether or not you're waking up if you're dead, but I digress. That tomorrow's not guaranteed. The only thing you got right now, and there's this phrase, my dad actually used to say it to me. Well, you got to have something. You got to have something for all your effort. And in a way, that's true. But the something that you get to have, if you're dead, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You moved on. You're either doing something else or you're in the great blackness and there's nothing left anyway. So it doesn't matter. But while you're here, you might want to own your house. And if you want to own your house, you have to diligently go about paying it off every little bit you can. Because every little bit, every extra payment lowers the amount of interest that you're going to owe the bank. And that's the robbery. That's the real robbery, is how much interest you're going to pay on that mortgage if you don't pay it off quicker. I think a whole lot of people, to answer that question succinctly, fail by the age of 40, 45 because they haven't learned how to delay gratification. You have to learn to say no. It's the same thing I've said in other videos about how society is defined more by what it says no to than what it says yes to. Your success in life is defined far more by how many times you say no than how many times you say yes. And that's not going to go for everybody, but I think a lot of people, it goes that way. And the perfect time to engage with discipline and to start delaying gratification is right now. Start today. And in 10 years, you'll thank yourself. Mad Max, interesting. Their mom and I were first cousins. I thought that did sound familiar. I don't know what that means. Much love and respect from Toronto. You are our favorite channel. Thanks for keeping us informed of truth, Frank. That's RGC. With all the bad things I say about Toronto, that means a lot to me. Where do our gifts come from? Faith in God. Frank is a dirt farmer. I was a dirt farmer. I was. Not anymore. But I am still very proud of that work. There's something very fulfilling about knowing that you are feeding someone's family, that what you're producing is literally turning into another human being. And I fed thousands of people, and hundreds of them I fed weekly. Like I was part of their life at least 6 months of the year. So there's kids out there running around, growing up, and there's a little bit of what I made has turned into them. And there's nothing more rewarding than that. That's always been a problem I've had. I used to work in factories. I worked in construction and contracting for a brief amount of time, from 16 to about 20 years old. I worked in a plastics factory, which had injection molding, and it made pool ladders and all kinds of parts. I worked in a skid factory, which was the most depressing job I ever had, because it was just feeding wood through a bandsaw. And in the process, I'm a mathematical kind of guy, so I would count the tree rings on the wood as it went through and figure out how old those pieces of wood are and how long it took to grow that tree. And then I could figure out from there, just as I'm working away in my head, I could figure out, okay, how many skids of wood are coming through, how many trees per day going through this place so that we can make skids so that they can just get busted up and burned. Super depressing. Farming was very rewarding. I felt very at peace with that, and this work too. I find at peace, but it's different. Like the way that I do this work is different. Being that I'm so resistant to common sense ways of making money with it, whether it's advertising, no, I don't want it. I had a sponsorship offer not long ago. It was $5,000, and all I had to do was do the whole insert a minute long plug for a thing, and the product was actually good. I agree with the product, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to be like the PBS of content creators. We'll see if it's successful or not. We have deer in southern Alberta, so many dropping their prions. You're a dirt smoker? I don't know what that means. Okay, so this is how far back we are. We're talking about deer. Man, I'm not good at this. I'm really not good at this. I can't even. There's a question. Will the CRA ever audit the PPC to show their donations are only there to pay Max Bernier? No. I don't think they're doing anything illegal. Period. They're very careful. The legal structure of the PPC is solid. I don't think they're doing anything illegal because, look, if you're trying to make a piggy bank, what's the point of making the piggy bank if the government's just going to come along and take it away? They've been very careful. They pay a lot of lawyers a lot of money to make sure they're structured the right way. I want to make that clear. I don't think I've ever said anywhere that they're doing anything illegal or fraudulent. I might have called it fraudulent what they're promising. But I actually, when I'm actively filming about them, I really try to avoid the use of the word fraud because the connotation. I think they're above board legally. Doesn't make it right. I even hesitate to use the word scam because I don't think it's a scam. I just think to understand what's actually on offer and what they're doing requires a certain level of sophistication and knowledge that most people that are involved with them don't get. But I don't think it's illegal. I don't think they have anything to hide financially. I think they've created a very legal, sound way to solicit funds, and politicians are allowed to make false promises. They don't have to deliver on their promises. So he can say whatever he wants. It's actually really clever and ingenious. It's just not very honest. I don't think we can vote our way out of this. Probably not. I think voting's a component. Oh, man, I just scrolled right to the bottom again. I got to figure out a better way to do this. Agreed. With the exception of Silver Spoon, folks, they have their own unhappy course. Otherwise, the rest of us are where our choices have made us be. It's so true, and you're right. People who envy the rich and those who were born to wealth haven't read enough books on psychology and sociology to understand what a challenge that actually is. Now, I know it's funny for somebody who's worried about paying the rent or just buying food, you might think that sounds crazy, but there is a relationship between being born with money and being psychologically imbalanced. It's actually a really big challenge. The other challenge that people face is when they're born with nothing and they make it. They sign that contract, they make it big, they become a huge influencer, and then they got all the money in the world. They can do whatever they want with it. And oftentimes they're selfish people, so they pursue the Lamborghinis and the Gucci and the Louis Vuitton handbags aplenty. But then they find out that's nothing. It's just decoration. It's just material. It doesn't fill the vacuum inside themselves. And when they realize that all the money in the world can't buy them happiness, they collapse like dying stars. I've seen it over and over again. I've read about it extensively. Yeah, they have their own cross to bear. That's for sure. And maybe it, if you're somebody that's, and I've been there, where you can't afford anything and you're just, I remember a specific instance when I was working the farm, and there were a few of my clients who were in the 7-figure club, maybe even more, but they were millionaires, very wealthy people. And they were good customers. But I used to envy them something fierce. I'm like, man, these people, they just live their lives. They don't have a problem. They're all happy-go-lucky and just doing their own thing. And man, I wish I could be like them. Mainly because there was one in particular, had several tens of millions underneath them. And they lived, they're still alive, but they lived in a tiny apartment. They didn't clean it. The bathroom was filled with stuff. And they're sitting on all this money and they're doing nothing with it. They're not turning it into anything. That part frustrated me. It still kind of frustrates me. There's a lot of dead money out there. It's just sitting under people who came into it and they have no ambition to do anything with it. They have no reason to try because everything's paid for, and they're not building anything. And there's people out there struggling to try and build something. And I was one of those people with the farm. I just wanted to build that farm. And I had to budget every dollar to try and make it go as far as I could, whether it was buying pots or soil or like there were all of these small, minuscule calculations that would have been so much better if I could have greased the wheel with some capital. And I just watched people sit on it and squander it. And that's, I guess, a little bit hard. But then you get thinking about it too. A lot of these people ain't happy. A person living in that environment with no motivation to even clean their own house, to even bathe, that's not somebody you should envy. Even if they have all the money in the world, they're broken, just as broken as somebody else, just as broken in many ways as the picture of that guy shown on Regina Public Transit. So be careful who you envy. Like, life isn't about money. You need it to survive, that's for sure. But it's an experience. And that, like I said earlier, that experience is something you take with you, perhaps, when it's over with. It's not defined by money. Hot the like button. I don't know how you hot a like button, Michelle, but maybe hit that like button. I spent $200 on meat yesterday and carried it home in my backpack. Good, man, Gary. Get some exercise and get some meat. That's the way to do it. That is the way to do it. When meat comes on sale, I always say to my wife, well, first off, we don't buy a lot of meat from the grocery store. We buy it, we bought a half cow this year. Next year, we're buying a full cow. It just means you got to save up through the year and you got to be ready for that expense at the end. So hopefully you've got the money to be able to afford it. But you fill those 2 freezers up. You're eating steak for $10 a pound. It doesn't get cheaper than that. Grass-fed, beautiful, perfect. And you can eat for a whole year. Super cheap. I did, before I got active again, maybe I should do it again, but I did a calculation on how to feed a family of 4 and how you can still feed a family of 4 for an entire month on far less than $2,000. You just have to change what you're eating. And a lot of that comes with going right to the farm and buying meat from the farm and whatever. But I did this math, and I think that math still holds up. Maybe it'll be a little bit more now. But you can still eat really good and really cheap if you put some effort in and you get away from that grocery store. But yeah, if you're going to the grocery store and it goes on sale, man, spend it. Spend it up front and freeze it if you have the space. That's how you save that money, Like, you got to pinch those dollars, especially if you want to own anything. In my last year of 2.05% mortgage, have to renew in 2026 April. Yeah, you know what, brother? Paco. When I bought my house, or when we mortgaged our our first interest rate was 2.95%. I remember the guy that I signed with, he said, you're never going to see that again, so make the most of it. And we did. And then we had to renew, and we renewed at 2.75%. And the guy at the bank said, I've never seen anything like it. It's not going to last. Went through that term, had to renew again. We signed for it was like 2.55 or 2.35. I don't remember now. I'd have to check. But we were so blessed that we had low interest rates for that long period of time. And I'm glad we made the most of it. But nobody expected it to last for as long as it did. Now, the scary part is, as this trade war gets kicked off and as the economy adjusts, are we going to get a low interest rate environment? I think it's going to come back. But people would do well to remember that in 1993, 1994, when my father bought his house, which he subsequently lost, partly because of the interest rates, it was financed at 13.75%. And in the 80s, interest rates were much higher. There's nothing saying that can't happen again, which is a whole other reason to skimp those pennies and save your money and try and pay off those notes. Try and pay it off. Because you need a place to live. Whether you're living in an apartment that you're renting or you're living in a house that you quote-unquote own, you got to live somewhere. I personally think it's worth, especially if you're young, if you're in your 20s and your 30s, it is worth delaying gratification. Don't go out and eat. Stay home. Delay gratification and get that underneath you, especially if you're planning on having a family, because it's really the only way to go. So you can keep living cheap. Yay, Warcraft. Yeah, back in the day, man. Back in the day, Warcraft was amazing. Make lunch at home, bring to work. Yep. Bag lunch. Used to make fun of people when I was a young man for doing that, but they were the smart ones. You see, before I was 23, I started waking up. I think I only really became a really full functional smart, maybe smart, because there's always a doubt in my mind. Human being was 25. I came into my own at 25. That's why I often say it takes 25 years to get a functional human being going in this world. Up to that point, you're still being supported because you got to get through all your own stupidity. I was a fool. I used to eat out all the time. I never cooked. I drank, I partied, I carried on, and I had nothing to show for it. And if I had kept on with that, I wouldn't be here right now. I make my own sushi. Very smart. Sushi, that would be good. It's going to be interesting to see what Canadians do when a non-elected Liberal government is in control. Well, I think they're going to be elected. If there's going to be a Liberal government, it's going to be elected. They've opted to go for an electoral victory, which I think they needed. And they need it for optics. To do the things that they want to do, they didn't need strictly to have an election to retain power. But it would look very bad. If they can get an election win, they've got that political ammo to say, look, we got a mandate, and now we're putting the screws to Canada. 15-minute cities, UBI, trade war unending, you voted for it, suck it up. They need that, they want that, and for whatever reason, the Canadian electorate at least appears to be flirting with the idea of giving it to them. You know, and I see people say this all the time. They're just like, well, you voted for it, you deserve what you get, but the vast majority of people don't vote for it. You know? The vast majority of people don't vote for any of it. I don't think the majority of Canadians deserve this at all. But here we are. Lisa Marie says, you're a good man. I try. It's not up to me whether or not I'm successful. Someone else will have to make that determination, or some higher form. I just try. Thrift stores are great to go and spend time in and actually come away with good quality items. You know what? That's the thing about child rearing too. I'm often telling people, just go ahead and have kids. You'll find a way. They're not that bad, you know, and I don't have teenagers yet. I understand that. But growing up, there was never a prospect that my parents were going to pay for me to go to college or university. And so that didn't happen. And I'm okay. I turned out all right. I didn't get hockey games. I didn't get extracurricular activities that were paid for. I didn't get any of that stuff because there was no money for it. Clothes were few and far between, and I remember growing up wearing pants that stopped well above my ankles because they didn't fit going to school like that. I'm all right. Maybe, some people might say I'm not all right, but I think I'm all right. I think I finished out pretty good. It's only as expensive as you make it. There's been people who have been bent out of shape at times, making like offhanded comments about my kids because like, oh, they have so many toys. They're spoiled. Well, the toys that my kids have are learning toys. Their rooms are not filled with Paw Patrol and Barbie and G.I. Joe. It's learning stuff. Flashcards, building things, magnet tiles, like learning stuff, physical things that you can build. You go on Facebook Marketplace, you can have this stuff for a dime. You can build it on a skimp. Like there's this wonderful thing that they have in Saskatchewan called community yard sales. Oh, I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to miss making videos the day of community yard sales. So bank that. I won't be around because the whole town, and this doesn't happen in Ontario, the whole town has a yard sale at the same time. So there'll be 70, 80, 100 yard sales in one little town. And it's for one day only, and it opens when it opens, and it closes when it closes, and then it's just over. And so last year, we made a map, and we made a route plan, and the whole family just attacked this thing. And I think we spent about $150 all day. We filled the van up with so much stuff. We had stuff coming. We had dinosaurs with bones on them, and like just so many cool things. If you're willing to be thrifty and you're willing to put some effort into it, life is a lot cheaper. If you're willing to do secondhand clothes or you're willing to take people's hand-me-downs, man, my kids got Calvin Klein T-shirts and all this other stuff. We didn't buy any of it because when it's done, and people give it to you, and then you, in turn, can pass it on. Make it cheap for someone else. That's how it works. Parenting is a really cool thing. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be expensive. And the fact is, there's this thing called the Universal Child Care Benefit, I think, or maybe it's the CCB, the Child Care Benefit. It used to be the UCB under Harper, and then they changed it to the CCB. Bottom line is, if you're broke working a minimum wage job, your child is heavily subsidized by the state because there are policies in place to try and encourage people to have children, but they're undermined culturally, and that's a huge conversation that we can have, but you might find it just doesn't cost you as much as you think it might, and if you're willing to relocate. If you want to have kids, Saskatchewan's a great option. If you want to homeschool your kids, Saskatchewan's a great option. There's a homeschooler's Bill of Rights here. I don't think it's called that. It's an act, but homeschooling is recognized as an enshrined parental right here in this province. And if you have a couple kids, you basically get your education levy back. So that portion on your property taxes that you pay for education, they give it back to you to invest in the curriculum for your own kids. In Ontario, that doesn't happen. You just get to pay for the teachers' union forever. And if you want to homeschool your kids, that comes out of pocket. You don't even get the write-offs. So these are things to consider. Part of the reason we moved to Saskatchewan was so that we could raise our kids in a better place. And man, that's a big sacrifice to make, but man, life is like that. I think about my wife's grandmother, rest in peace. When my wife's Dutch. She descends from Dutch people. When they left the Netherlands, they never saw their families again. They couldn't speak English. They came here. They were basically in indentured servitude for a good amount of time, and in their little spare time, they taught themselves how to speak English and do all these things and become part of the culture, went on to have all these kids and more grandkids than I can count. When you're talking about moving from Ontario to the West or relocating and you're talking about all the reasons that you can't, it's good to keep in mind people like that who literally left everything behind at the chance of just starting something new and doing something new. Yeah, there's pain. It's difficult choices. There's people back east that I wish I could help. People I care about. People I've tried to help. Said, hey, if you come out this way, I'll borrow money to help you get here. I will loan you the money. All you got to do is pay me the interest. I will help you. You don't have credit. I've got credit. I'll help you. I'll do anything I can. Even with less reason to leave, even with less reason to hold on, they don't want to change. You should embrace change, I would say. Build a better life. Quick pull my finger says, starve the impulse to purchase muscle that this entire society programs into our souls. Yeah. You have to practice delayed gratification. Willpower is a muscle. You have to exercise it. I found out the other day. I found the other day church in some restaurants and quieter than. I should have stayed in Ottawa because any work in Smiths Falls is only for part-time, full-time hours, which is just too much. Right. Yeah. Try and do market research before you relocate anywhere. I didn't do enough of that when I moved here, but that's okay. In my life so far, I bought 2 new cars, 1 lease, many hand-me-downs, $200 junkers, a new truck when I turned 60, paid cash. Good for you, man. Good for you. Nice work. Mad Max says, delay gratification makes your constitution stronger. You are the news, Frank. I'm certainly something. Depends who you ask. Slowfinger says, a rage farmer? I don't think of myself as a rage farmer. That's certainly not what I'm here trying to do. I don't know. There's a saying about opinions and defecation, but I won't get there. Everybody's got one, and you can't let them shape your mindset too much. ADHD is horrible to live with? Yeah, who's got ADHD? I've got that too, believe it or not. I was diagnosed when I was a kid. Takes a great degree of discipline to counter the, oh, look, there's a squirrelism, and to try and keep an ordered life. There's a table beside me right now, actually. It's just full of tools and things, but I've restricted it to that one table. So whenever I need something to fix something in the house, I go to that pile, which is the house pile, and that's where the ADHD gets restricted to. And anything I need is there, but it's one big mess. And my garage is not one big mess, but it's much messier than other ordered people. Something that you have to work on. I don't take any meds for it. I've thought about it at times. They wanted me on Ritalin when I was a kid, and my parents rightly decided not to go that direction. I do wonder sometimes what it might do for me. But yeah, I've just chosen to try and mitigate it myself the last 45 years. Your content is great, Frank. I'm glad you think so, Sally Ann. Keep building it. I plan to. I hate the ads. Don't do it, says Leo. Critical thinker. Critical thinker. Critical thinker. I hate the ads. Don't do it. Stopped watching other casts that have ads. Yeah, I don't like it either. Oh, and we just skipped to the bottom again. What's easy to grow? I need help. What's easy to grow? Nothing. It all takes work. People used to ask me that. The one I loved is, what grows in the shade? And I used to hear this. I'm not even kidding you. What grows in the shade that takes no maintenance and blooms all year long? The urge to slap people sometimes was definitely there. I had people come along. They're just like, I want something that grows in the shade. I want it to bloom all year, and I want the blooms to look like this. Mike, God rest Mike's soul. He's gone now, but he was the one that asked me that question. He wanted it to look like a fountain top firecracker. And I'm like, bro, God created a lot of stuff, but there's definitely some things that weren't on the list. And what you're describing doesn't exist, at least not on Earth. So what's easy to grow? Beans. I think beans are fairly easy. You weed them once and they usually will outgrow. They'll outpace the weeds. That's not always true. If you want them in rows and you want them beside other things, you're going to have to hoe them a couple times. But generally speaking, even if you only hoe them once and you keep them clean once, you'll get a yield. Beets are very forgiving, but they do require intense weeding. I don't recommend carrots at all, but that's just me. I hate weeding carrots. It's the worst job I've ever done in my life is weeding carrots. So frustrating. Peas are a good one. especially if you grow them up a trellis. Cucumbers, fairly easy, but depending on where you are, it's kind of a limited window because they grow for so long, and then the fusarium wilt comes in and kills them anyway. I only ever had 1 year where I didn't get fusarium. Man, I had cucumbers that year. Tomatoes, especially if you're growing them up a trellis. But if you don't want to do that, just keep them weeded, and they'll outpace the weeds. But you do have hornworms, which will show up. There's a thing called dipel. It's a bacteria that specifically kills hornworms. Make your life easier, or you just go out with a pair of scissors every morning and you cut them in half. It's kind of gross, but that's what you got to do if you want tomatoes. There's nothing easy. It all takes work. There's no anybody that's trying to sell you on the idea of a zero maintenance garden or xeriscaping or any of these other buzzwords. To me, it's just a bunch of scamming. It might not be scamming. There's no such thing as a garden that's easy. You have to maintain it all. In the past, Frank would have been a radio host. Maybe. But I'm here. This is the closest thing to radio we have. Saskatchewan doesn't have the same protest culture because the winters are 6 months long, for sure. But even in the summertime, man, it's a pretty mellow place. There's not a huge, even the leftist contingent of crying. When they do a pride parade down in Regina, it's nondescript compared to the chaotic perversion that happens in Toronto, to say it nicely. Aaron, gardening is wonderful. I have 5 raised... Okay, so raised beds. So I shouldn't even... Raised beds make your life a lot easier when it comes to weeding, especially if you're using sterile soil medium. It's easier to maintain. Helen Mowat, this is your comment. Now in my 70s, one needs the height and the sit-down edges. Yep. But you can keep going long past your 70s, into your 80s. Some people into their 90s. Raised beds are definitely an option. Heard someone describe willpower as being kind to and doing things for your future self. It's a nice reframe. That's Emily A. Yeah, that's so true. There's a guy I watch, completely unrelated to politics. His specialty is actually crypto, but he writes posts to himself in the future and then forgets about them, and then they pop up and it's reminders to his future self. And I think that's an ingenious device. I have this isn't the future, but this is my book that I put all my family stuff in, and I write it manually by hand. My dad left me he's got a whole set of journals. They're not very complete after all the years of his life. There's a lot of gaps in them, and sometimes the writing is sparse. So I made a commitment that I was going to do the same thing for my kids. Because when you open this up and you're with my dad's journal, you can actually feel, and with mine too, but you can feel the texture that the pressure of the pen put on the page. So you can run your hands over it. It's kind of like Braille, but you can feel it, and you know that your father put that down. Right? He's gone now, but it's almost like having him here. But I make a habit around Christmas time. That's when I pull out the photo albums. That's when I pull out the journals, and I go through it all. And I reread what I did for the year, try and think about how I'm going to improve things with, some would argue, including myself, limited success, but that's how I make progress. And then at the end of it all, if I can get it there without losing it in a fire or some other god-awful calamity, my kids will have that when I'm gone. Something for them to look at. So I use it as a tool, and it's also something to leave them. My hyperactivity is only in my mind. I understand that, Deborah Summers. The wife and I bought a 1-year-old Ford Explorer ST cash in 2021. No debts other than mortgage at 54. Awesome. Great job. You still need money, though, don't you? Funny how that works. Home Depot sells them cheap, usually under $5 each. I have no idea what's going on here. I just skipped to the bottom again. Blur cup of coffee guy you ATR describing is John Bolton. John Bolton, the politician guy. I live near greenhouses. I get great produce for cheap. Tomatoes at 60 cents a pound. Yep. Yep. Nothing beats local. It's always cheaper if you can find it in season. No luck in tomatoes, Frank. Yeah, some people can't grow tomatoes. I don't know why that is. Mushrooms fairly easy, but need some attention. They do. You can get some trouble molds. I don't know if mold's the right word, but you can get into some stuff that can make you unhealthy if you don't know what you're doing. Hostas. Yes, hostas are pretty easy. Pigweed, definitely. Well, if we're going that route, just get yourself a crabgrass garden. Or get yourself a prairie grass garden. What else could you do? Goutweed. Variegated goutweed. Green and white leaves. Keep your kids away from it because it might actually eat them. It's so prolific. There are certain plants like goutweed. I used to have it in the greenhouse or in the cold frames. And people would come along and they're like, oh, that's pretty. It would make a great border. I would proceed to talk them out of it. Like any customer that was interested in buying that plant, I would spend the next 10 minutes making sure they understood what they were getting into and making sure that where they were going to put it wasn't by a river, which it would just unleash hell upon the world. And I'm sure some people did it anyway, but that plant, I spent more of my time trying to talk people out of buying it than anything else. Frank, you are real, and that's the difference. Yes, that's one thing I will agree 100% with. I am real, and it's funny. The conspiracies that people ascribe to my attention, or when I read in the comments section, who's paying you? You know, it must be nice cashing those CPC checks, or it must be nice cashing those Soros checks, or the idea that I tried to take over the PPC, that people say I ran in an election and I lost. It's so bizarre to me. All of these things together are so bizarre because I live my life. I know where I've been and I know what I've done. I know what my weaknesses are. I know what my flaws are. I know where my sins were. I know that nobody's paying me. You people clicking the donate link. That's how this pays. That's the only way this pays. There's no sponsorships. There's no ads. And there's no secret financer behind me paying me to say these things. Like, I'm literally just real. I don't know how to communicate that any better. I'm just living my life. I know what I am. I know what I am because I'm living it. And so it's all to say, it's truly bizarre when you see people comment on your nature and your intentions and you know yourself for what you are. And I can appreciate how challenging that must be for other people as well. Oh, gotcha. I'm just reading Slowfinger Rage Farmer. Someone asked in the chat what kind of farming doesn't need soil rage farming. Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't even know how many people are here. The counter broke up at the top. Actually, you know what we can do? We can refresh this. Just see if there's anybody even in here. Now there's 400 of you. Wow, that's awesome. I think the best I ever did before was 130 in November, so that's pretty cool. Frank, do you like deer meat pepperette sticks? You know, I haven't had that yet. We did do a deer, not this fall, but last fall. And we're pretty much through that venison now. We did it all in the ground, which was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. We had like 80 pounds. It was a big deer. And then we missed. We had our tags this year, but we didn't get one. Little buggers. There's like 40 of them out there every night now, but do you think any of them were around in the fall? And actually, the one night, so my wife was out manning the gun, and she came in about a half hour early because she was getting cold, and it was like a half hour before sunset, and so hunting ends for the day. And she came in, I made her a tea, and we both sat there at the table, and we watched this buck. It was a 3 or a 4 point. Just come walking right up to the stand because we can see the stand from the house. And it's like, you SOB. You knew. You knew, didn't you? Yeah. It's interesting, too. I used to wonder before before I had to change, because like the farming lifestyle is very different from the wilderness lifestyle, and I've never lived the wilderness lifestyle, and I don't pretend at all to be an expert in it. I don't necessarily like the sight of blood and guts. My wife, she's all about it, man. I slept a little watching her butcher that deer. I slept a little uneasy that night because I'm like, man, I'm not all that different from that deer, and she was real easy with it, but yeah, made me think. But she's also very kind and loving, so I think I'm okay. I'm going to mind my P's and Q's. But what was I trying to say? The wilderness lifestyle is different. It's a different skill set, a different mindset from farming. I don't know. I had another point I was trying to make, but I kind of forgot it. Super chat is not turned on. No, Paul. It's not. Because that would involve becoming a YouTube partner. And then you enable ads, you do super chats. And the thing about super chat is Google takes 30%. So anything you send, they take 30%. It's the same with X. If you do subscriptions through X, they take 30%. And I think once you make 50,000, they take a straight 10%. I don't know if there's anything. I think it's 30% with Google all the way up. I don't think you want that. I know I don't want that. And it's not about greed. It's about, I'm here to take advantage of Google's services through YouTube. I'm not necessarily here to make them money. If you want to support it, you can go to frankvon.ca/donate. And there's two ways there, only PayPal and e-transfer. It's the only two ways I've got set up. I tried to set up some buy me a coffee thing, whatever, and I don't know, I got convoluted, so I didn't. I have not been very good with that part of things. So maybe I need to tidy that up. Maybe I need to take some time and work on the back end and make it easier for people to do that. But yeah, super chats aren't on. I'm just reading through the comments as they come in, so. Flesh bots. You mean for the audience, the people that are here? Yeah, it could very well be flesh bots. There's enough of them out there. Free Canada, Frank. Would that I could. Keep doing my thing. Maybe we can help. Need to peel everything. Don't touch soft skin berries. But I like berries. I had 2 bears up my apple trees, and they broke the branches and ran up a tall pine tree to get away from me and my angry ass. That's funny. When I moved here, I had to I didn't get used to it. We had to adjust because the house had been vacant for 7 years. Nobody had been living here. So the bears, the fishers, the cougars, everything, the deer, everything treated it like an extension of its environment because it's pretty isolated. So there was a while the first spring, every morning I woke up to bears. One morning was 2 adult bears bopping around in the backyard. The next day was a mom and 3 cubs ripping apart my barbecue. A day after that, I went outside to dump garbage, and there just happened to be a bear walking across the yard. And so how I dealt with it was anytime I had to pee, I'd go outside and I'd walk to the far perimeter of the property, and I just started peeing everywhere. And then the 2 big bears that kept coming back, I had to fire off several shots, nice and loud, make a lot of noise. And then the last time, because they weren't getting it, I actually literally chased them into the woods. And the whole time I was firing the shotgun into the ground, and I'm running after these bears, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm in my shorts. That got the point across, though. They haven't been back since. They bug everybody else, but they don't bug me. Getting used to speaking the language of nature, which largely revolves around urination, you roll with it, right? It's just one of those adjustments that you have to make in life. And that timber wolf, he's close, but he's pretty wary of the house. He keeps an eye on things. I had a problem, actually. Was it last year? Amanda was out. That's my wife's name, by the way. Might be the first time I've ever said it on stream. It's out there now. Anyway, Amanda was mowing the grass up the driveway. And so it's a long driveway, and she was using the push mower. It's like a half kilometer one way and then a half kilometer back the other way, and she was using the push mower to get some exercise. She's a Sheila, that's for sure. Strong woman. Anyway, so she's doing it. So she goes to the end, and she turns around, and she comes back, and she gets to the corner, and there's a timber wolf sat right in the middle of the driveway between her and the house, just sitting there watching her. Now, the lawnmower's going real loud, you know, and it's not scaring this thing at all. And so Amanda, she makes herself nice and big and scary, and she lets out the biggest scream she could in her life, and it just sat there watching her. And she didn't have a gun with her because she was just cutting the grass. And, you know, we don't always carry when we're outside. Oftentimes I do, but I haven't been lately. It's almost bear season, so I'll probably have a shotgun with me whenever I go walking. I don't want to kill anything, but I want the ability to make noise, and I want the option if I need it, especially when you got two small kids. You know, they look like food to these things. But anyway, there's that timber wolf sitting there between her and the house. So she's thinking to herself, what do I do here? How do I work this out? And then of a sudden, the timber wolf got up, it walked about 20 paces into the grass, and then it sat back down. And she walked past it, and it just watched her go past. It literally moved and let her pass. So she didn't tell me about it. She put the lawnmower away. We finished our day. We went to bed, and it was the next day that she told me that happened. Well, I went out and I found the timber wolf, and I didn't shoot it, but I let it know that I was there, and I wasn't impressed, and I chased it off way over. I moved that wolf as far away from the house as I could, letting it know that wasn't appropriate, and this is the first time I've seen one back. But again, it's not coming near the house. So I believe in live and let live, but you have to communicate dominance over your domain, and you have to be willing to enforce it, and hopefully you don't have to kill anything, because I don't want to have to do that, and I haven't had to do that. Only when I want to eat. Your wife sounds awesome. There's no comparison. I think often about my son and my hope that he finds one like her, that he has that experience. She's my best friend. She's my biggest supporter, not just fan, supporter. She's not really a fan. She doesn't watch my videos. She's seen enough, and she gets the fireside chats, so she knows what I'm all about. She was pushing me to get back into this for years. Her belief is that I need to be doing this. And I said to her, it's not like a farm, or it's not like driving truck. I have no idea how I would ever make money to pay the bills doing this. And she's like, you need to try. We'll figure it out, but you need to try. You need to be doing this, because she believes in me. And it's amazing that after we will be 19 years together in October, we will have been married. Oh my God, our anniversary is coming up. Whew. That's coming up soon, 9 days. Awesome. You guys just might have saved me. April 14th. No, so I can't even do math. Yeah, April 14th. That's 9 days. We'll be married 13 years in April. We're together all the time. We work together on the farm side by side. We live together. We sleep together in the same bed. I'm not trying to be graphic or anything. We're together all the time. We've been through everything together. And we still talk every single day. We sit, we drink our coffee and our tea together, and we have conversations. And that, I don't even know how that works. I don't know how we still have things to talk about. She'll go out for 3 hours and she'll come home, and we both have to debrief each other. It's like we have so much to say to each other, even when we have nothing to say. And it's like we're sit there and be like, I feel like I should have more to say. I wish everybody could experience that. It's the true. I think it's the true value of the institution of marriage is what I'm experiencing, and I'm so thankful to have it. From my earliest days, when I was a 5 or 6 year old boy, I can remember just my life was so chaotic. The divorce was so chaotic. Everything was so up in the air in my life that all I ever thought about doing, what I dreamed about, was finding somebody to settle down with. And I remember being 24 and having gone through, dating and relationships that didn't work out and everything. I started to think it was never going to happen for me. And then I gave up, actually, right around the age of 25. I gave up. I sat down one day at my desk and I wrote a list of everything that I wanted in a spouse. Front, I filled one page up, front, small writing, and I flipped it over and I was starting to write on the back, and I'm like, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get all these things. I crumpled that piece of paper up. I hucked it in my desk. I put it in my desk, crumpled up, and I don't know what happened to it. It disappeared. I never saw it again. It's the weirdest thing. But for the next 10, 12 months, I went about my business. And I wasn't a bad-looking young man. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was actually a decent-looking man. And I went about my business. And anytime a girl would smile at me and flirt and, kind of give me the signs, I came up with a list of questions I would ask her to try and suss out what kind of a person she was. And if she didn't answer those questions correctly, I didn't wish her any ill will, but I didn't pursue. I didn't ask out for dates. I didn't even try. I just gave up. I focused on my life. I had my dad to take care of. I had a lot of challenges that I was dealing with. Life was not easy back then. And so I just wouldn't pursue. And so this went on. And I can actually remember all the girls in that time because there seemed to be a lot of them. As soon as I decided I didn't want nothing to do with dating, all of a sudden there was women coming out of the woodwork everywhere that wanted something to do with me. It was incredible. Blondes, brunettes, and and I just didn't. I had people trying to marry me off to their daughters. I remember when I met my wife, I had an ex. I had an ex chasing me around. I don't want to get into that, but I had an ex chasing me around, and then I had this other girl. She was always coming to the house when I was working. And I remember once I drove my pickup truck into the conservation area, and I just hid back there. Because it was just like I couldn't get away from it. And some people would say that's a good problem to have, but for me, I was just trying to focus on my work and focus on the fact I wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be alone because I was looking for something particular. Anyway, there I am. It's October of 2006. I'm selling onions and watermelons. It's the only two things I got left. And up comes Amanda to my stall, and the first thing she says to me is, "Nice melons." I said, "You like watermelons?" She said she did, and we talked a little bit, and there was a little bit of flirting that went back and forth, and she said, "I'll see you next weekend." I said, "All right, I'll be here." So off she went. And then the next weekend came and went. She didn't show back up, and I started to forget about it. There was a lot of other cool stuff that was happening at the same time, and everything just sort of dovetailed together. But she showed up the following weekend, and she's standing there. And so I asked my list of questions, which I couldn't even tell you what they were now. If I thought about it long enough, I could probably tease them back out, but it was only, I don't know, maybe 5 questions. So I asked her my questions, and you work them into conversation, but she got them all right. And so I'm standing there, and we're talking, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, she's sticking around, like she hasn't left yet. Like, and she answered all the questions. I'm like, I don't really have a plan for what I do here. I didn't know. And then I realized, you get her phone number. That's what you do. So back then we had flip phones. Before I even asked for her number, I pulled my flip phone out of my pocket, I snapped it open, and I'm like, all right, what's your number? And that's how it came out of me. All right, what's your number? I'll fit you in the Rolodex. I felt like such a heel. I probably turned every shade of pink. I think I'm turning pink right now. I can feel my face flushing. I was so embarrassed about the way I handled that. Luckily, she saw through it. Anyway, 3 weeks later, we were engaged. And we're still here, 19 years later, still talking, still best friends. And I hope everybody finds that. Like that, I just wish everybody could get it, and I really hope my kids could find that too. Six feet tall, 6-figure salaries, 6 inches down there. Is that the new 666 right there? It's sad that, like, none of those things should really matter, because a relationship it's so much more than money. My wife didn't get together with me for money. That's for sure. If anything, I cost her opportunity. And when she moved in with me, I mean, we didn't even have trim in our windows. The insulation was still hanging out. There was no money. I had 2 holes in the wall. I literally not punched with my hand, but I made 2 holes in the drywall. The top one was for rent, and the bottom one was for bills. And I just stuck cash in the top one until it was full, and then I put cash in the bottom one, and we figured out who we were going to pay. We were broke, man. We didn't even have a bed. We slept on some blankets on the floor. Like, those were really hard days. And yeah, she chose to be there. And everything that we have, we built together. You know, it's a pretty cool thing. I wish people could find that. I wish people could have that experience. Yeah, great story, Frank. Get her phone number. Yeah, exactly, Sally. Get her phone number. Yeah, that's what you do next. But, yeah. They were good times, man. I wouldn't trade them for the world. It's still a good time. I mean, having 2 kids, I was so afraid of having kids, and that's the other thing. If I hadn't had the first one, I would have missed out on the best experience of my entire life. And it hasn't been easy. Like I said, coming out of that election in 2019, I was like $3,000 away from maxed out credit. I had borrowed every dime to finance my life through that because I was afraid to make money in any way because we were doing something anti-establishment. So I wasn't taking donations and I wasn't selling anything on the farm, which was probably a bit too much. I probably still should have been doing more about sales, but I didn't have time anyway. And we got through that by the skin of our teeth. My son had a 6-foot distance encounter with a coy wolf a few years back in Ontario in the suburbs. Yeah. You got to remember what they are. They're furry and cute, but they're also predators. Sounds like up north by PA and Nipawin. If anybody's thinking about moving to Saskatchewan, avoid PA like the plague. That's my advice. That's what they told me when I went there. The first time I visited Prince Albert, I'm just like, where's a nice place to eat? I wasn't even looking for a restaurant. I was just asking, like, where do you eat? And the lady at the counter said, there's nowhere. You don't go out at night. I'm like, what? What are you telling me? And then I went downtown and I saw the mall. And then I saw that nobody stops for the streetlights downtown. You go through the reds because nobody wants to stop. Like, Prince Albert's an interesting little town. I think it's worse than Oshawa, Ontario. And if you're in Ontario, that's saying something. Either Oshawa or Peterborough. I think PA is probably the worst of the lot. Your wife is super cool, Frank. Great attitude, both of you. Yeah, she is. She is. I think she could have done so much better than me. Frank, do you floor light on the house? Do you floor light? I don't know what that means, Dustin. Floor light? Critical thinker back in. The good old days when you took care of things by yourself and neighbors weren't getting in your business about it. Yeah. There's still a bit of that to be found in the world, but not in the city. Nova Scotia has large mutant coyote wolves. That sounds like nightmare fuel. Mark's Carney coming in. A kid here on Vancouver Island got grabbed by a cougar a few years ago, and Grandpa beat the F out of it. Good. That's what I would do. I don't want to ever have to try and take down a cougar with my bare hands, but I do have an idea of what I would try to do if I had to. They're just big kitties. You got to get a hold of the back of that neck and start swinging it around, and I don't know. I don't want to ever have to face that challenge with just my bare hands. But I have thought about it. Same here. I've known my wife since 1986. We were both retired with each other 24/7, never argue. We've been married for 12 years now. Yeah, Amanda and I don't argue either. I think we've had, I don't even know if you'd call them heated discussions. We've had maybe 3 elevated discussions in our time. We've been through a lot together. But I wouldn't call it arguing. The one time I'm going to tell the story anyway. In the modern culture, you might call this physical violence, but I'm going to tell it anyway. We had come home on a market day. It was a Saturday. I'm just thinking here. I don't think she'd mind me telling you the story. It was a Saturday. We were both exhausted. It was long summer, probably July, August, like some of the hardest months to work. And so we go into the house and we're just about to sit down and have lunch. And back then, there was this potato salad you could get at market, and it was fantastic. It was like her favorite food was this potato salad. Her whole world was this potato salad, this little tub, this little 500 milliliter tub of potato salad that we got pretty much every single market. So she was sitting down to eat it, and just then, a customer comes in the driveway. So someone's got to go deal with it. So we did rock, paper, scissors, or we did something to figure out who was going to deal with it, and Amanda drew the lot, and so off she goes. And I just wait. Well, this customer wasn't a customer. They were just looking to talk, and that's what often happened, is they would spend 40 minutes or an hour of your time not buy anything and just looking for somebody to talk to. And it used to really grate me because you only got so much time in a day to do all the work that you need to do. And the fact of the matter is people didn't mind taking up all your time and not even giving you the courtesy of a sale. So you got to make that time up somewhere else. That's one of the biggest problems with having a public-facing business. I think anybody in retail who owns their own business will have encountered this and knows exactly who I'm talking about. And I got to say, every customer is valuable, except there's a whole cohort of customers you'd rather send to someone else so they can be valuable for them. And we did that. There was customers we actively discouraged, but I digress. They were there for I'm not kidding you, 40 minutes after a long couple days. Well, I decided in my infinite wisdom, the second Amanda went outside, I emptied the potato salad into another bowl, and I put it in the fridge, and I put the empty container back on her plate because I have been known to eat her food before. And I thought this was going to be a great joke, but I have ADHD. So my brain moved on, and I forgot what I did. So now I've finished my lunch. She's still outside, and I'm doing paperwork or something in the office, and I'm just sitting there. And she comes in, and all I hear is her yell, "Really? Are you serious?" And I said, What are you talking about? And she comes walking into the office, and she grabs a hold of my belly with her hand. She's got a handful of my flesh, and she twists it. She's like, "You ate my potato salad?" And I said, No, it's a joke. It's a joke. I swear it's a joke. It's in the fridge. And she held on. She held on for like another second or two before she just slowly let go. And then I gave her her potato salad. That there is the most violent our relationship has ever been. And I got to tell you, I never messed with her potato salad ever again. That was the only time that happened. So even the most docile, nicest person is capable of violence under the right conditions. Brad Zimmerman. Mark Cash Carney invented country music. Man, I can't believe you guys have been with me this long. The 40-minute talking customer put them to work on the farm. Man, I considered it. I had one woman show up the one day, and I had never met her before. I didn't know anything about her. She pulled out her family photo albums out of her car, and she proceeded to go through them with me. And there's a struggle that you go through internally. You can be really rude, and sometimes I have been, and you get rid of that person really quick by being very rude. And then there's other times where you're more sympathetic, and you're just like, well, what does it say that this person pulled in your driveway? They don't even know you, and they're trying to show you these albums. What does that say about them and their mental state? And so sometimes you make the choice to go along with the procedure, and that time I did. Man, seen all kinds of things. I learned about a family history that I didn't even need. But anyway, folks, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I figured you'd like a live stream. I'm going to let this go out, and then I'll read the comments and see how it was received. And maybe we do these more often. Who knows? But I appreciate your time on this Saturday. We're still on Saturday, right? It's not Sunday yet. Yeah, Saturday the 5th. Thanks for tuning in.